This is Dr. S. the Legend. He's back. We're going to discuss a case, United States versus the Southern Poverty Law Center, Inc., SPLC. If you go to the internet, people will say, it's a good case, it's a bad case. In my opinion is, it depends. This is an indictment, a grand jury indictment. It's like an arrest warrant. It was issued April 21st, 2026 by the Justice Department. I have the indictment and I've read it. And I'm going to read part of it. I'm just wondering how many people in the media and in the internet have actually read this. Probably not. This was handed down by the U.S. District Court, Middle District of Alabama, Northern Division. The SPLC is a civil rights group. The charges in the indictment, and I'm going to go and spend a lot of time on the specific charges, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid field sources, informants, $3 million. They paid it to extreme right-wing groups and individuals. Let me just stop for a second. Now, the FBI, they pay informants, and other government agencies do, but there's extremely strict guidelines. And what the SPLC did, according to the indictment, is they used phony business entities that had no business purpose and set up phony business accounts without the knowledge of the donors, and paid the $3 million. And what exactly did they get? More importantly, from a financial point of view, the SPLC has $786 million in assets. This is very important, as I'll get to this later. And they have $822 million in the bank, which is called an endowment, and they invest the money. So, seems like everybody got happy here. The hate groups and individuals got paid. SPLC got donor money. The donors felt good because they were giving money to a worthy cause. And the SPLC believes they didn't do anything wrong, that everything they did was okay. And my response to that is, it depends on the judge and the jury, because this is an indictment. The critiques of the indictment say that this is a weak case. Now, I dispute this. I've practiced law for over 40 years, in litigation, many lawsuits. And one of the most important things is who gets to be the judge in the case. Judges are assigned randomly. And what is the jury pool like if there's going to be a jury trial? I've had really good cases in my experience, but wound up with a bad judge and the case went sideways. I've had cases that were average, got a good judge, and did very well. And then there's the infamous slow judges, where you have a good case and it goes on forever. I had one case recently that finally settled after 18 years. Let me speak about the venue, the jurisdiction. Where is the court? The court is in the Middle District of Alabama. And all the judges in the Middle District, they were appointed by Donald Trump. Now there are 23 counties in the Middle District, and they draw the jury pool from these 23 counties, and I did an analysis, and I found out that 61.4% of the jurors who voted in the last election voted for Donald Trump. This is out of 468,000 people that voted. I did the math. keep in mind this case will stay in the Middle District because of Alabama, because the SPLC is located there in Montgomery, Alabama. I'll give you another example. The criminal trial against Donald Trump in Manhattan. He had what I would call a judge that wasn't particularly sympathetic to him. And the jury pool was made up of 85% of the people that did not vote for him. And I said right from the beginning, the odds are they're going to convict him. Maybe they'll get a hung jury. Now, this is the system, whether you like it or not. In my opinion, the best chance that the SPLC has is maybe if this goes to trial, that they'll get a hung jury. There's no way they're going to get a jury that's going to rule that they're not guilty. This is a criminal case. An indictment is criminal charges. This could also be a potential civil case. Civil cases usually involve money. The donors, and there were many of them, could potentially sue SPLC for fraud and misrepresentation. They didn't tell them, SPLC did not tell the donors about the money that went to the field sources. This could be a class action. Never, never underestimate lawyers and their ability to file lawsuits. And never underestimate class action lawyers. Now, informants are, as I mentioned before, are not normally used by private entities. Used by police, other government agencies, the FBI, strict guidelines. SPLC is not a government entity. It gets no money from the government. In this case, and I'll read it to you at the end, the government wants forfeiture. Means if they get a guilty verdict, they're going to go after part or all of SPLC's assets, the $786 million. I'll repeat that. They're going to go after their assets because they want civil forfeiture. Give you an example of civil forfeiture. Your cousin borrows your car and goes down to the Badlands and buys drugs, and the police seize the drugs, arrest your cousin, and under civil forfeiture, since the cousin used the car, goodbye car, the government will seize the car. So, it appears SPLC got in bed with the devil, these right-wing super extremist organizations. And according to the indictment, they already admitted part of it. It's like they've already confessed. Now, if I got money and put it in bogus bank accounts and distributed it to other individuals as an attorney, the government would go after me, find me guilty, lock me up, and take away my bar license. Disbar me. Guaranteed. Let me read from the indictment. Indictment handed down by a grand jury in the Middle District of Alabama, April 21st, 2026. Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, stated mission included the dismantling of white supremacy. I'll repeat that, white supremacy, and confronting hate across the country. Unbeknownst to donors, some of the donated money was being used to fund the leaders and organizers of racist groups, including the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nation, the National Alliance. SPLC paid informants, field sources, engaged in the active promotion of racist groups. At the same time, the SPLC was denouncing the same groups on its website. Is there something wrong here? SPLC also had a field source who was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia. Bet you didn't know that. that Field Source made racist postings under the supervision of SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the events for attendees. In order to covertly pay its field sources, SPLC opened bank accounts connected to a series of fictitious entities. The covert nature of the accounts allowed SPLC to disguise the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the fraudulently obtained donated money the SPLC paid the field sources, the informants. In order to keep the scheme going, SPLC made a series of false statements related to the operation of the accounts. That's a no-no. Don't do that. According to its website, SPLC is a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. To carry out this mission, the SPLC relied in part on public and corporate donations. As the SPLC explained on its website, we never take legal fees from our clients, and we accept no government funding. Rather, we rely on the compassion and generosity of people like you. SPLC website also explained to potential donors that your support powers our work to confront hate, stand up to injustice, and defend our civil and human rights. From the courtroom to the classroom to communities across the country, you can help create a more just and inclusive future for all. These donations were used in part to fund various publications such as the Intelligence Report, Hate Watch, and the Intelligence Project Dispatch. The top banner SPLC website had a link for public donations. By clicking the donate button, potential donors were brought to a web page that explained how to donate money to SPLC. This page also informed donors that with your support, the SPLC Action Fund will pursue a bold action agenda to confront our country's most urgent challenges. Together we will uplift progressive candidates who uphold inclusive democratic values while investigating and exposing candidates using hate and extremism to gain power. Between at least 2014 and 2023, the SPLC paid their field sources in a clandestine manner. Doing so, the fact that while the SPCA received donation money under the auspices that the funds would be used to dismantle violent extremist groups, this donation money was instead being used in part by the SPLC to pay leaders and others within these same violent extremist groups. That money was then used for the benefit of the individuals as well as the violent extremist groups. Between 2014 and 23, the SPLC secretly funneled more than $3 million in SPLC funds to field sources who were associated with various violent extremist groups. Examples of field sources who were secretly paid by the SPLC include, but are not limited to, the following. This should be interesting. And this $3 million, there's no evidence what the money was used for. They just gave these people and groups money. Field Source 37 was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia, and attended the event at the direction of SPLC. Field Source 37 made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the event for attendees. Between 2015 and 23, SPLC secretly paid Field Source 37 more than $270,000. Again, no evidence what the money was used for. Field Source 9 was affiliated with the neo-Nazi organization, the National Alliance, nice people, and served as field source for SPLC for more than 20 years. Field Source 9's activities included fundraising for the National Alliance. Between 2014 and 23, SPLC secretly paid Field Source 9 more than $1 million. In 2014, Field Source 9 entered the headquarters of a violent extremist group and stole 25 boxes of their documents. Field Source 9 coordinated payments for the copying of the materials with a high-level SPLC employee who acknowledged the documents had been stolen. The original stolen materials were returned to the violent extremist group, and a second illegal entry by Field Source 9. Thereafter, the high-level SPLC employee utilized the documents in part as the basis for a story published on SPLC's Hate Watch website and authored by the employee. Another Field Source 39 was blamed for the theft and was paid approximately $6 million by the SPLC to falsely take responsibility for the theft. This is questionable activity, in my opinion. Field Source 27 was reported as an officer in the National Socialist Movement and the Aryan Nations affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club. Between 2014 and 2020, SPLC secretly paid F-27, Field Source 27, more than $300,000. Field Source 42 was the former chairman of the National Alliance. SPLC website contained an extremist file web page about Field Source 42 from which the SPLC solicited donations. Between 2016 and 23, SPLC secretly paid Field Source 42 more than $140,000. This overlapped the time period in which Field Source 42 was featured on SPLC's extremist file webpage. Field Source 30 led the National Socialist Party of America, was the former director of the faction of the Aryan Nation, and a former member of the Ku Klux Klan. SPLC website contained an extremist file webpage for Field Source 30 from which the SPLC's solicited donations. Between 2014 and 2016, SPLC secretly paid Field Source 30 more than $70,000. This overlapped the time period in which Field Source 30 was featured in SPLC's extremist file website. Field Source 43 was the reported national president of American Front and a convicted federal felon for his participation in cross-burning. Between 2016 and 19, SPLC secretly paid Field Source 43 more than $19,000. Field Source Unknown was a member of the Ku Klux Klan and married to an exalted cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan. Field Source Unknown and their spouse were involved in litigation where the Ku Klux Klan applied to take part in Adopt the Highway program. During the course of the litigation, known payments were traced from SPLC to Field Source Unknown. In addition to directly paying leaders and others associated with the same violent extremist group that the SPLC sought donations ostensibly to dismantle, the SPLC also used field sources to indirectly fund money to other violent extremist groups. This included funneling more than $160,000 from a fictitious entity to Field Source 11, who then sent funds to various violent extremist group leaders, including the former Grand Wizard of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. To secretly funnel donated money to the field sources, individuals at SPLC, including a person who would become Chief Financial Officer, employee number 1, and a person who would become the Director of Intelligence Project, employee number 2, among others, opened a series of bank accounts at Bank 1 and Bank 2 in the name of various fictitious entities, including but not limited to the following. Let's get these names. These are the fictitious bank accounts. Number 1, the CIA. Number 2, Fox Photography. Number 3, Northwest Technologies. Number 4, Tech Writers Groups. Number 5, Rare Books Warehouse. These fictitious entities were never incorporated, had no bona fide employees, and conducted no actual business. At all the times relevant to this indictment, Bank 1 and Bank 2 were insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC. So therefore, under the warrant, under the indictment, they're being charged with wire fraud, a serious allegation. Now, to carry out the scheme, the SPLC explicitly sought donations under the auspices that donor money will be used to help dismantle violent extremist groups. In SPLC solicitations for donations, donors were not told that some of the donating funds were to be used by the SPLC to pay high-level leaders of violent extremist groups and others, nor were donors ever told that some of the donated funds were used for the benefit of the violent extremist groups, or that some of the donated funds would be used in the commission of state and federal crimes. They gave him the money, but they didn't know what the money was being used for. There's no indication. Well, it says right here, they used it for the commission of state and federal crimes. Therefore, under the indictment, there's being charged with false statements to a federally insured bank. When you open a bank account, you have to give them legitimate information. You can't be lying and creating bogus accounts. Again, if I did that, if I took clients' money and opened a bogus account so I could access their money, and I was caught, they would lock me up. That's right. Lock me up, take my law license away, and throw me in a clink. Individuals at the SPLC opened bank accounts for CIA, Fox Photography, I love it, the CIA, Northwest Tech, and Tech Writers at Bank One. Similarly, individuals at the SPLC opened a bank account for Rare Books at Bank Two. The purpose of opening these bank accounts for the fictitious entities was to be able to conduct financial transactions that made it appear as if the field sources were receiving money from the fictitious entities rather than receiving donated funds from the SPLC. The SPLC was hiding the true intent. This is a no-no. As a lawyer, my client came to me and told me they were doing this stuff. I would, you got a problem, brother. In 2020, Bank One conducted an internal investigation in these accounts. Thereafter, an SPLC employee requested that Bank One, this is very important, close the accounts associated with the CIA, Fox Photography, CIA, I can't believe it, Fox Photography, Northwest Tech, and Tech Writers, and transfer the remaining balance in these accounts to Bank One account held in the name of SPLC. In response to Bank One internal investigation on or about September 9, 2021, listen to this. The president and chief executive officer of SPLC, that's two guys or ladies, as well as the board chair, that's three persons, of the SPLC, admitted the following in writing to Bank One. This is an admission. They told the bank, pursuant to the discussion we had earlier this week, please let this correspondence serve as confirmation that the accounts listed below were open for the benefit of the Southern Poverty Law Center operation operated under the center's authority. And again, they list those accounts, the CIA, etc. They're admitting in writing to the bank, we lied. We opened these fictitious accounts. They're admitting their guilt. This is an admission of guilt. In my mind, you can't open fictitious bank accounts. I don't care what the purpose is. I don't care how holy your organization is. You can't do it. You're violating federal law, federal banking law. Don't do it. Don't do it ever. Therefore, under the indictment, they engaged in money laundering. That's bad. That's really bad. Specifically from in or about August 2020, continuing from in or about August 2023, SPLC utilized the ACH system to pay field sources with donated funds. These ACH payments were masked with monikers such as Rare Books and IP Research. These masked ACH transactions were designed to conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the donated funds the SPLC was paying to the field sources. Therefore, at the end of the indictment, the government is going to use forfeiture, assuming there is a conviction of the offenses under Title 18 United States Code, Sections 1956. The Southern Poverty Law Center shall forfeit to the United States, pursuant to Title 18 United States Code, Section 982A1, any property, real or personal, involved in such offenses, or any property traceable to such property. Therefore, what the government is saying in this indictment, under the charges of wire fraud and the other misappropriations alleged in the indictment, the federal government is going to go after their real or personal property involved in such offenses. Any property. They're going to go after all their assets, even though they only paid $3 million. They only paid $3 million to the field sources. The government can take all their assets. Just like that example I gave you, where the individual borrows his cousin's car. Suppose he borrows a Rolls Royce and goes down to the Badlands and the Rolls Royce is valued at $500,000. The government, in that instance, even though it's a small drug transaction, they're going to seize the Rolls Royce. They're going to keep it. Absolutely, this happens all the time, especially with drug transactions. When they catch the people engaged in drug transactions, seize their car, seize their trucks, seize their property, their houses, their airplanes, their boats, whatever, even though it exceeds the value of the material seized, the contraband. So SPLC has a big problem. It's the opposite of the problem that Donald Trump had in Manhattan. The problem is it's in the Middle District of Alabama. It's not in Manhattan. This is in the heartland. I don't think, and the jury pool, as well as the judges, are heavily weighted towards voting for Donald Trump. And they're going to be sympathetic to the administration. Regardless of who is on the jury, regardless of their race, religion, ethnicity, they're going to, in my opinion, be rather severe in dealing with SPLC. And again, that's just the criminal aspect and the assets. What about the money in the endowment? As I mentioned before, there could be a potential class action by the donors. All you need is one unhappy donor to file a class action, and it's going to apply to all the donors. And they're going to want all their money back. And they're going to sue. And don't underestimate class action lawyers. They're going to look at this case and say, not a bad case. So I think the other aspect is there may be a forthcoming superseding indictment where the individuals we mentioned, Chief Financial Officer and the others, those three other individuals, there's the possibility they may also be indicted. This may be just the beginning of the indictment. And again, whether it's, don't believe what you see and hear on the internet and people saying it's a good case, it's a bad case, and the SPLC they were just trying to do the right thing. They may have done the right thing, but they did it in the wrong way. Now, very quickly, this is my podcast, Conversations with Dr. S. the Legend. I can be reached at this email,